No one heard the serpent arrive. The oceans did not scream, the skies did not tear, and the gods did not look down in time. The world simply tightened, quietly, invisibly, as if something ancient had drawn a slow breath beneath the seas and never released it. Long before Ragnarok had a name, before prophecy hardened into certainty, there were fishermen who felt their nets grow impossibly heavy, and sailors who swore the horizon had shifted overnight. They spoke of waters that tasted bitter, of waves that moved against the wind, of a pressure in the deep that felt like a watching eye. The wise dismissed these fears. The brave laughed at them. Only the old ones fell silent, for they remembered the children of chaos. Jörmungandr was one of them. Cast into the ocean by Odin himself, the Midgard Serpent did not rage, nor did it rise in fury. It sank, it grew, it waited. Fed by time and silence, its body lengthened until it circled the world, scale pressing against scale, a living boundary between order and annihilation. When it finally closed its jaws upon its own tail, the earth trembled, not from motion, but from completion. Thor felt it before he ever saw it. The god of thunder stood upon the cliffs of Asgard, Mjolnir heavy at his side, when the wind died without warning. Clouds froze in place. Even thunder, his constant companion, refused to speak. In that moment of unnatural stillness, Thor sensed a presence vast beyond measure, something that did not fear gods, did not challenge them, but endured them. From that day on, the sea no longer felt empty. Thor would meet the serpent more than once, drawn toward it by fate like iron to a lodestone. Each encounter carved itself deeper into his spirit, leaving behind not triumph, but unease. For Jörmungandr did not roar like other monsters. It whispered through poisoned tides, through dreams filled with drowning skies, through the slow certainty that some battles are written long before the first blow is struck. And somewhere in the dark, the serpent waited for the sound of thunder to come closer. Thor did not speak of the serpent, but Asgard felt the change in him. The laughter came less easily. His storms grew heavier, as if each thunderclap carried a question with no answer. Even among gods, there are presences that demand silence, and Jörmungandr had become one of them. It was Loki who finally named the dread. Over shared fire and shadowed smiles, the trickster spoke of ancient things that were not meant to be slain, only delayed. He spoke of a serpent born not to conquer the world, but to define its end. Thor listened without interruption, his fingers tightening around Mjolnir, for he knew when mockery had abandoned Loki's voice. Fate was no joke. The first true meeting came not in prophecy, but in deception. Disguised as a fisherman, Thor set foot upon a frail boat, its wooden ribs groaning under the god's hidden weight. The sea was calm, too calm, its surface stretched like darkened glass. With each pull of the oars, the horizon seemed to retreat, as if the world itself resisted being approached from this angle. Thor cast his line deep. What answered was not a fish. The ocean convulsed. The sky dimmed. From the abyss rose a pressure so immense that the boat creaked like a dying thing. Slowly, deliberately, the serpent surfaced, coil by endless coil, its scales slick with venom and age. Its eyes did not blaze with fury. They regarded Thor with cold recognition. God and monster stared into one another across the trembling water. Thor hauled with all his might, veins blazing, muscles straining against destiny itself. Mjolnir crackled in his grasp, thunder begging for release. For one suspended moment, it seemed possible, just possible, that the serpent might fall, that fate might fracture. Then the line snapped. Jörmungandr slipped back into the depths, the sea sealing over it as though nothing had risen at all. The world exhaled. The boat drifted. Thor stood alone with the echo of what almost was. From that day forward, the prophecy sharpened. The serpent no longer hid its influence. Storms rotted before reaching shore. Crops failed near the coast. Dreams across Midgard filled with choking waters and a sky collapsing into the sea. Even the gods felt it now. The slow tightening of a circle nearing completion. Ragnarök was no longer distant. Thor knew then that there would be no clever victory, no trick, no avoidance. The serpent did not hunt him, and he did not hunt the serpent. They moved toward one another because the world itself demanded it. Somewhere beneath the seas, Jörmungandr shifted, loosening its tail at last. The circle had begun to open. The signs came quietly at first, as all true endings do. Winter stretched beyond its season, biting deep into Midgard until even memory of warmth felt like a lie. Wolves howled beneath unmoving stars. The sun rose pale and weak, as though afraid to climb higher. Men whispered that the gods had turned away, but the gods knew better. Something older than neglect was at work. In the depths, Jörmungandr stirred. The serpent loosened its coils, not in haste, but with deliberate patience. Each movement sent tremors through the seas, warping currents, poisoning shores, cracking the balance that held the world together. Ships vanished without storm. Coastlines bled into the ocean. The boundary between land and water began to forget itself. Thor watched it all from Asgard, powerless to intervene. Never had the god of thunder known restraint to be heavier than his hammer. Each instinct screamed for action, for battle, for an ending forced by strength. But this was not a foe to be chased down. This was a reckoning that advanced on its own time. Odin's ravens returned with dark tidings, giants marching, dead gods stirring, the roots of Yggdrasil groaning beneath impossible strain. Ragnarok had moved from prophecy into motion. Thor said nothing. He only prepared. When the final day came, the sky tore itself open. The seas rose as if answering a silent call, and from them emerged Jörmungandr. Not creeping, not hiding, but ascending, venom spilling from its fangs like living smoke. Its body eclipsed the horizon, its scales reflecting a sky on fire. Where it rose, the earth cracked. Where it looked, life fled. Thor met it upon shattered ground, thunder rolling behind him like a war drum. There was no fear in him now, only grim understanding. He did not raise Mjolnir in anger, but in acceptance. The clash shook existence itself. Hammer met scale with a sound like worlds colliding. Lightning carved the air. Venom burned the land. Each strike from Thor carried the weight of gods. Each movement of the serpent carried the indifference of eternity. They did not speak. There was nothing left to say. At last, with a final surge of strength, Thor struck true. Jörmungandr screamed, not in pain, but in release, as its vast body collapsed, poison flooding the ground as the serpent fell. The world shuddered, freed at unimaginable cost. Thor stepped back. 1 step, 2, 3. The venom reached his heart before the thunder faded. After 9 steps, the god of thunder fell, lifeless beside the corpse of the world serpent. Silence followed. The sea withdrew. The sky dimmed. And though the serpent was slain and chaos broken, the victory tasted of ash. For the price of balance had been paid in thunder, and the world would never forget the sound. For a long moment, the world did not move. The serpent lay still, its vast coils slackened at last, venom seeping harmlessly into a sea that no longer obeyed it. Nearby, Thor rested where he had fallen, Mjolnir heavy in his open hand. Thunder did not answer him. Lightning did not rise. The storm had spent its final breath. The gods arrived too late. They stood in silence, not as rulers or immortals, but as witnesses. Odin's single eye lingered on Thor's lifeless form, seeing not just the fallen god, but the fulfillment of a fate long feared and long denied. Even Loki said nothing. There are endings too complete for mockery. Slowly, the world began to settle. The seas withdrew from shattered lands. Poison thinned. The sky dimmed from fire to ash. Life, wounded but unbroken, searched cautiously for the shape of tomorrow. Ragnarok had not ended the world, but it had stripped it of certainty forever. Thor's death became more than legend. Among mortals, they spoke of the god who could not escape fate, yet faced it without retreat. Among the gods, his name became a reminder that strength alone does not grant survival, only meaning. He had not saved himself. He had saved the balance. And somewhere, deep beneath the earth and sea, echoes remained. Not of the serpent's hiss, nor of venom boiling against stone, but of thunder, rolling once more through memory. A sound that said even the greatest powers are finite, and that courage is measured not by survival, but by what one is willing to lose. Thus ended the tale of Thor and the Midgard Serpent. Not as a triumph, not as a tragedy, but as a truth older than gods themselves, that even beyond the ordinary, every victory demands its price. Long after Thor had fallen and Jörmungandr had sunk to the forgotten depths, the world slowly stirred. Rivers whispered over stones scarred by venom. Forests sighed as new shoots pushed toward a cautious sun. Mortals rebuilt what had been broken, never fully understanding the price paid by a god whose thunder once shook the skies. And yet, in the hush of twilight, when the sea mirrors the dying light, a faint ripple moves against the current. Not anger, not revenge, but a reminder that some forces, older than memory and larger than legend, never truly vanish. The serpent's shadow lingers, coiled in the corners of the world, waiting, watching. And in that shadow, the echo of thunder reminds all who dare to listen. Even the extraordinary carries a cost beyond imagining. Courage is not measured by survival. Strength is not measured by victory. True power is shown in the willingness to face fate, to endure, and to act when the world itself demands sacrifice. Thor's thunder may have fallen silent, but its lesson will resonate for ages beyond the ordinary.